Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. On the radio, on Facebook Live, on podcasts everywhere, on YouTube, and on talklawradio.com. If you want to be a guest or you want to sponsor the show, you can go to talklawradio.com and there's a button for you to click there. But this is our third segment, and so we're going to talk about saints and sinners. I'm trying to do the Donald Trump dance. Something like that.
I thought that was the Todd.
No, I'm not a very good dancer. But came up with the Sinners and Saints segment because we're all sinners and saints at some point. And I wanted to talk about a specific alleged sinner. I like to talk about people in the news. And there was an article that came out in San Antonio Express News about a case where the Texas Attorney General filed a lawsuit against Alejandra Driscoll for providing immigration services without a law license. Have you heard about this kind of scenario? And my other question is this a sign that there's an unserved population, that the need for immigration services is greater than immigration attorneys can provide? So
my answer would be no on that one.
Okay.
It's a sign of how people can sometimes have a scenario in their head. So if you're a person that's dishonest and you can tap into that, like what their weakness, I guess,
right,
then you can manipulate people. So it's a manipulation.
Right.
When I have heard this scenario, it often comes with a large amount of money, $20,000, $30,000, and then there's usually something tacked on. Well, but he said that he used to work there, so he knew this guy, or he said he was an ex-ICE officer, so he knew this, he had the inside track. And to be blunt, sometimes they're coming from countries where it works that way, and they're not used to the United States where we have a system of laws and everybody fits under the law.
All right.
So it's
it happens.
Yeah, it happens.
But it's also, I think, the necessity that's being taken advantage of. You know, they can probably tell you what you want to hear, of course, but if it were to be a different scenario, you might probably think on it a little bit more. I say this because, you know, sometimes it's people are in a different context. And, you know, if they tell you, you know what, pay me this much and your life will change, well, I think that's why people end up in these scams.
Yeah, they get taken advantage of because they're in distress.
Mm-hmm.
They're not speaking, you know, the same language. There's a
Mm-hmm.
language barrier. And so I think there is a lot of opportunity for fraud and abuse when you're dealing with a consumer that doesn't speak the language. And there's a lot of fear there. Mm-hmm. They don't understand the system. And so that's why the Texas Attorney General intervened in this case and barred this person from providing this advice for money.
Can I say one other thing?
Yeah.
In some other countries, you can attest to this, a notary is different.
Yes, exactly.
So here a notary is, you just fill out a form and you can become a notary.
I myself am a notary here. And one of the many things that they, you know, in the association that I'm in, that they stress out is that you stress that there's a difference between a notary public and a foreign notary, if that makes sense. Because it's completely different things.
My understanding of a notary, like in Mexico, for example, is it's like a lawyer.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we use that same word, and it can confuse people sometimes.
Oh, right. So the fraudsters, they take advantage of that.
When people have come to my office and they've done something, maybe made a boo-boo, you know, with some of the applications, and an attorney would have known not to do that, it was usually a notary. And there's also this odd thing where you're not going to believe this, but someone with a license can be a little intimidating. And, you know, so people are always very respectful to me. They'll call me licenciada, for example. But it's more comfortable. You feel like an attorney's up here, but you can go to the notary and, you know, it's just more of a comfort level.
So what does that Spanish word mean that you just said?
Just a person who has a license, but it's a term of deep
okay.
respect. I can't really even wrap my head around that because it doesn't really work like that here.
Right.
Right. I'm no better than anybody, you know, but it's where it's almost like intimidating. But the thing that happens is it's not just filling out forms. I know anyone can fill out a form, but there's also all of this.
Right, knowing.
So should you fill out that form?
Right, knowing the right form. I also wanted to mention another sinner and saint, I think, was Paul from the Christian Bible. We read about a man named Saul who became Paul. And so before Paul had his experience on the road to Damascus, he persecuted Christians. And so that was a sin.
Right.
And after he had his experience with Jesus Christ, then he started converting people to Christ.
Right.
And so I think that I just want to give people hope. I don't make it a habit of doing this, Shannon. You're the Mrs. Rogers of San Antonio. Usually you're out there giving people hope. But today I wanted to take your limelight and
do it. I love it.
Sinners can be saints also.
Amen. Well, of course. I wonder if Paul had good emotional intelligence. Remember that moment when he was like, but I'm changed. What's wrong? Like, why can't I eat dinner in your house? You know, like,
Right. Good point. Well, let's talk more about before we talk about the programs. I did get a text. You can text Todd, as somebody did, and it says, "Great show for Shannon. Though the focus of this conversation is specifically about individuals migrating to the United States, what can our immigration system do a better job of to protect the rights and lives of some of our most discriminated against? The Native Americans and indigenous peoples who were technically in the country first. Other than allowing the free crossing of borders between U.S. and Canada, which has already been established, how can we as a country, policy-wise, do better for these people?"
I can't get a que bonita. He got a que guapo.
No, it says, "P.S. Juan es muy guapo." So you get the question, and he gets a compliment.
Right.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, I like how here in San Antonio, our law enforcement has... I know that there's this idea of tough borders. We got to be tough. But you remember that tree that the one that survives the hurricane is the one that can bend and be flexible, reasonable, and rational? It's not that tree that's like this, because there's a reason for that. So if we're tough, everything has to be tough, then we live in a community where immigrants are too scared to ever call law enforcement. So we have programs like the U visa that is supposed to, when it works correctly, allow for there not to be a subculture. So there's just everybody that has documents, and then a whole subculture underneath that, where people are too afraid to take advantage of our laws because if they call, they'll get immediately deported. So I think we do a great job here in San Antonio. We're not anything close to like a sanctuary city or anything like that, but law enforcement is very cognizant of the fact that you create a dangerous situation if you have people living so in fear that they will never report someone that's abusing them, people that will just hire and then not pay, just any kind of crime you can imagine. If you don't allow people to prey on that community, then we're all safer because criminals can get rooted out. Does that make sense? And then the U visa, if you don't know what that is, that's when you cooperate with law enforcement. Even if you don't have documents, you can go ahead and get permission to stay if you prove it, if it's a qualifying crime and you provide enough verification that this is actually what happened.
Okay.
Make
so
sense?
I was thinking that immigration attorneys are sort of specialized. Some focus on one thing, some focus on another.
Yeah,
Just like physicians, they don't do everything.
I think you're right.
Okay, so if somebody wants a U visa, they should ask the immigration attorney that they're calling, do you provide that service?
They
Right.
could, but most immigration attorneys, I'm sure when your office would get a call, you go through a list. So there's a list that you're going through. Okay, where can this person fit in? And then a lot of people, the reason we have so many undocumented people is that some people just don't have any line to get into. You know, if you don't fit into one of those categories, you're done. Nothing
Yeah.
exists for you. There's no "you're a nice guy" category.
And so why don't they just go back to where they came from?
Yeah, I mean, well, legally they're supposed to.
Yeah, but who's going to tell them that? Is that where they have to go to an immigration court and a judge has to tell them?
If they get picked up, like if there's a traffic stop or something and it comes to somebody's attention, like law enforcement, that they don't have permission to be here, then what has been happening is they're put into a deportation proceeding. Or crimes, don't get me started. If you commit a crime, you got an ice hold, you're done.
Okay. Well, we got to take another break. Thank you for that segment, guys. Good conversation about immigration. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.